The film begins in the town of Grantham, Virginia, where police were investigating a bungalow. A gruesome murder had taken place in this bungalow, where an elderly couple and their servant were killed. The surprising thing was that there were no signs of anyone having forced their way into the house from outside. On the contrary, it seemed as if the people in the house were trying to escape from inside. Then, Sheriff, who was investigating the incident, found a policeman in the basement. When he went down and looked, he found another corpse in the basement. It was the corpse of a completely naked girl who had been buried in the ground. Since he could not identify the girl, Sheriff gave her two names, Jane Doe, and the second one was Jane Doe. At the town morgue, Tommy and his son Austin perform a post-mortem on the badly maimed corpse. Tommy and his family have been doing this work for 3 generations, and Tommy now teaches his son Austin the same work. Austin's girlfriend Emma was a little scared. She had come there, and Austin and Emma were going to go on a date tonight. Before leaving, Austin gave her a tour of the morgue, and they reached the freezer where dead bodies were kept. Seeing this, Emma insisted on seeing the dead bodies, but due to fear of her father, Austin clearly refused. Then Tommy reached there and gave them permission. Austin then took out a corpse from the freezer and showed it to Emma. Emma found the face of the corpse completely crushed. She noticed that the corpse had bells tied to its feet. Emma asked Tommy about the bells, and Tommy explained that in old times, it was very difficult to know whether a person was in a coma or had died, so bells were tied to the feet of dead bodies. If the person made even a slight movement, the bell would ring. Since Tommy was old-fashioned, he had been following this tradition till date. Emma asked Tommy how the face of the corpse got into such a state, but Tommy told her that someone had severely damaged the face. After seeing and hearing all this, Emma began to feel uneasy and decided to leave for her date with Austin. Just then, Sheriff entered the morgue carrying the body of the girl, Jane Doe, and told Tommy and Austin that they had to finish the job tonight and report back by morning. Austin asked if he could go with Emma, but he decided to stay with his father. Emma was a little upset by this, but Austin convinced her by saying he would finish the job soon. Emma took Austin for a candlelight dinner and left, saying she would come to pick him up at night. Austin then returned to the autopsy room where Sheriff, Tommy, and Austin examined the dead body of Jane Doe. Suddenly, Tommy's pet cat made a loud noise. Seeing that the cat was in distress, Tommy chased it away. After this, Sheriff told Tommy and Austin that he had not been able to determine the cause of death for any of the dead bodies found at the house. He guessed that the servant might have killed the girl for some reason and tried to bury her body in the house. When the owners unexpectedly arrived, the servant killed them as well, but before dying, one of the elderly couple shot the servant with a gun. Sheriff said he would reveal this theory to the press, but could not tell who Jane Doe was or how she died because neither her ID nor fingerprints were in their system. The most surprising thing was that there were no injury marks on her white, spotless body. Sheriff left it to Tommy and Austin to solve Jane Doe's death mystery by tonight so that he could give a report to the press the next morning. After Sheriff left, Tommy and Austin started the post-mortem of Jane Doe. Meanwhile, they heard a broadcast on the radio that the weather would be very pleasant for the next few days. They began their work, estimating Jane Doe's age to be 26 to 28 years. Austin was taking pictures of Jane Doe from every angle. While examining her eyes, they found a shocking thing. Jane Doe's eyes had turned white, which usually happens when a person dies many days ago, but her body still showed signs of recent death. Her body temperature was higher than normal, which again was a sign of many days since death. All these things were confusing to them. Austin also noticed that Jane Doe's waist was very thin, which did not fit the rest of her body. Tommy thought that Jane might have been like this since birth. Meanwhile, Tommy found that Jane's wrists and ankles were completely broken, but there was no sign of any wound from the outside. Then Tommy's attention fell on her nails, which were broken. There was something inside like mud, and upon investigation, it was found to be a type of soil used in northern countries like England, which is highly inflammable. In the olden days, people used to dry it and use it for burning. Along with the nails of Jane's hands and feet, some clay was also found in her hair. It seemed as if someone had buried Jane completely in the ground. Tommy continued his investigation. Austin saw that there were no injury marks on Jane's face, ears, or nose, but when Austin opened Jane's mouth, they saw that some of her hair was inside. Both were stunned. It seemed someone had ruthlessly pulled out her hair and broken it. Tommy suggested that this could be a case of human trafficking, as he had seen a similar case 15 years ago, where two girls' hands were tied with their wrists tied to prevent them from escaping. During this time, when Austin went to take a picture of Jane's face, he noticed that Jane's nose suddenly started twitching, and blood started gushing out. The next moment, a fly came out of her nose and flew away. Seeing this, Tommy and Austin were stunned. Tommy looked at Jane's open mouth and saw that one of her teeth was missing. He also finds a thread inside her mouth, which they take further. After that, when Tommy examines Jane's private parts, he finds many wound marks inside, but he is unable to reach any conclusion from this. After examining all the external organs, Tommy and Austin get ready to dissect Jane. Meanwhile, the weather outside starts getting worse, and the sound of thundering clouds can be heard inside. Ignoring this, both of them continue their work. Austin picks up Jane's body and places it on a block. As Tommy raises his knife to slit her chest, they suddenly hear a loud thundering sound. At the same time, there is some disturbance on their radio, and a song starts playing, "Open Up Your Heart and Let the Sunshine In." However, Tommy and Austin don't take this seriously and continue their work. Tommy makes an incision from Jane's chest to her stomach, and as soon as he does, a stream of blood starts flowing from Jane's body as if she is alive. Seeing this, both Tommy and Austin are shaken. Tommy pays attention to Jane's internal organs. Looking at her, he says that her thin waist is not natural. Austin asks what could be the reason for her having such a thin waist. Tommy replies that she has such a thin waist because of wearing a corset for a very long time. Austin points out that the fashion of wearing corsets has been banned for centuries. After cutting open the rib bones and examining the internal organs, Austin sees that Jane's lungs have collapsed. Tommy objects, saying that even if someone smokes 10 packs of cigarettes daily for 30 years, their lungs would not become so weak. This happens only when someone is burnt to a great extent, but there was not even a single mark of burning on Jane's body. This shocks Tommy a lot. When Tommy takes out Jane's heart and looks at it, he sees knife marks on her heart, and similar cutting marks are found on her other internal organs. But how can someone inflict such injuries without tearing the body apart? They both ponder this when suddenly, the lights in the room start turning on and off by themselves, and they hear a strange sound from outside. Hearing this, Austin follows the sound and sees a person standing at the turn of the corridor in the mirror. When he goes to the turn of the corridor and looks around, he doesn't see anyone there. On the other hand, Tommy sees a fiber in Jane's intestine that needs to be taken out. When he tries to cut her intestine, his hand gets injured by one of Jane's rib bones. Meanwhile, Austin follows the sound coming from the ventilation of the storeroom. When he looks into the ventilation, something hits him with a loud noise, causing Austin to fall to the ground in fear. Tommy reaches there after hearing his voice. Seeing Tommy, Austin feels relieved. When Austin looks inside the ventilation again with the help of a flashlight, he finds his cat badly injured. The cat's insides had disappeared from its stomach. Seeing this, Austin and Tommy become very emotional. Tommy can't stand seeing his cat in pain and euthanizes her to relieve her suffering. Tommy then cremates his cat respectfully in a crematorium. After that, they continue their work, and when they cut open Jane's intestines, they find a flower inside. Tommy researches the flower and discovers that it is called jimsonweed, which causes paralysis when ingested. This flower is also found only in northern countries. After getting this information, they proceed with their work, but suddenly the weather changes. The weather turns cloudy, and they hear the sound of thundering clouds. Meanwhile, they hear a radio report of heavy rain in their city. Austin is shocked because he had heard a weather report of clear skies before starting the autopsy. Austin now suspects some danger and asks Tommy to postpone the work for tonight. However, Sheriff had asked Tommy to find out the cause of Jane's death by tonight, so he couldn't stop in the middle. Tommy tells Austin that if he wants to leave, he can go, but Austin doesn't want to leave his father alone, so he continues his work. Meanwhile, Tommy finds a human tooth wrapped in cloth in Jane's vagina. He also sees a strange picture on the cloth with some Roman numerals written next to it. Moreover, the cloth remains intact despite being in Jane's body, while both of them have strange patterns on their hearts. The drawing on the cloth seems to be related to some religious ritual. While investigating, Austin compares the cloth with the thread found in Jane's mouth and discovers that the thread is from the cloth. When Austin puts the tooth found in the cloth on Jane's missing tooth, it matches exactly. This leads Austin to conclude that someone had pulled out Jane's tooth and forcibly wrapped it in a cloth. Considering all these things, they conclude that Jane was given as a sacrifice in some religious ritual. She was first tied up, then her hair was pulled out, and she was fed a flower called jimsonweed, which paralyzed her. After that, her teeth were pulled out, and she was wrapped in a cloth and buried. She was then stabbed with a knife repeatedly, and when even after all this, she didn't die, they burnt her. Thinking about her painful death, Tommy and Austin are horrified. However, Jane's flawless body defies all their conclusions. How can someone be tortured so badly without even touching their body? This question keeps both of them puzzled. Suddenly, the radio starts again, reporting that the rain in their city has increased. The next moment, there is some disturbance on the radio, and amidst the disturbances, they hear the reporter's voice saying, "You would not want to get caught in this stormy flood, but if you have already got caught." Hearing all this, Austin suspects that the messages on the radio are warning them of some danger. Austin asks Tommy to leave the place immediately, but Tommy stops Austin, ignoring the warning. He asks Austin to help him skin Jane. Austin is forced to obey his father's orders. When they completely skin Jane, they see a horrifying scene. On her skin, the same pictures and Roman numerals are engraved as on the cloth found inside her. Before they can react, all the lights in the room go off automatically, plunging them into complete darkness. A panicked Austin turns on his flashlight and looks around to see that all the corpses in the room have disappeared. Seeing this, Austin panics and takes Tommy out of the place as fast as he can. He starts to leave after realizing there is no electricity in the place. The light is from a generator, but without electricity, he feels the need to leave. The lift does not start moving, so both of them head towards the basement door. Suddenly, due to the storm, a tree falls on the door, blocking it. Tommy and Austin are unable to open the door even after using all their strength. They try to call Sheriff for help, but there is no network on their mobile phones. So, they start heading towards the landline phone in their office. But then they notice someone walking towards them through the corridor. They hear the sound of footsteps and out of fear, they run into the office and lock the door from inside. Tommy immediately calls Sheriff, thinking he is near, but due to the weak signal, the door remains blocked. Unfortunately, they are not able to talk to Sheriff, and the call gets cut off. Both of them are now trapped in that place. They are thinking of another way to get out, when suddenly, their hearts stop at the sound of a bell. The sound indicates that a dead person with a bell tied to their feet is near. The dead body comes very close to their door. Sensing its presence, Austin peeks out from under the door and sees the feet of the dead body. Austin gets scared seeing this. Then the dead man starts banging on the door loudly, trying to open it. Seeing this, Austin and Tommy push a heavy cupboard against the door. After banging the door for a while, the dead man stops. Now Austin is sure that Jane is the one doing all this, because everything was fine before they brought her here, but as they continued to dissect her, things got worse. However, Tommy still does not believe this. Tommy notices that blood is oozing from the wound on his wrist. Seeing this, he goes to the bathroom to clean the blood. Suddenly, there is some movement behind the curtain. Seeing this, Tommy gets scared. Tommy moves towards the curtain, and when he sneaks closer, Austin, who is sitting outside, sees someone's shadow behind the curtain. Austin moves towards Tommy and removes the curtain. Austin gets scared seeing that there is no one behind the curtain, but the next moment something attacks Tommy and the bathroom door opens. The thing bandages itself, and Tommy starts to struggle. Austin breaks the door and goes inside, finding Tommy lying on the floor crying in pain. Austin picks up his father and consoles him. After the incident, Tommy also becomes convinced that Jane is the one doing all this. They go back to the autopsy room to dispose of Jane's body. They notice that the body parts they had taken from Jane are gone, but Jane's body is still exactly the same as before. It seemed as if Jane's body itself was keeping her organs intact. They decide to take Jane's body to the crematorium for cremation. As they prepare to leave, the door of the room suddenly locks on its own. Austin uses an axe to break the door. He makes a hole in the door, but when he looks out of the hole, suddenly a dead woman stands there. Seeing this, Tommy and Austin are scared. Without hesitating, Austin pours fuel on Jane's body and sets it on fire. However, everything starts burning except for Jane's body. His cameras and all the research he did on Jane get destroyed. Seeing this, Tommy extinguishes the fire completely. Then they see Jane's body burning, but no burn marks are still visible on her body. Meanwhile, the electricity is also cut off. When Tommy hears the sound of the lift starting, he picks up an axe and tries to kill himself. They run towards the lift to save him, but before they can reach it, the lift stops and goes up. Just then, they see a dead body coming towards them. Seeing this, Austin, out of fear, starts pressing the lift button loudly. It seems that the dead body had come very close to them, and seeing that their life was in danger, they hear the sound of the lift coming and quickly open the lift door, entering the lift. However, before the lift could close, the power goes off again, and the lift door opens halfway, allowing the corpse to come very close to them. Seeing this, Austin shows courage and attacks the statue with an axe, but from outside, a familiar voice of a girl screaming comes from behind the corpse. When Austin hears that voice and comes out of the lift, he sees that the girl he had hit was not a dead body, but a gas canister that had been cut with an axe. Seeing his girlfriend die in agony, Austin's tears do not stop. He breaks down into tears, realizing that he was the one who had asked her to come there at night. Austin and Tommy realize that Jane is using her powers to create illusions in their minds, making them think she is dead and causing them to kill her. Both of them go back and sit in the lift. A question comes to Austin's mind, and he tells Tommy, "If Jane had the power to kill us all along, why did she keep us alive till now?" Austin remembers another thing. He tells Tommy that before they were killed, Jane tried to give them indirect warnings over the radio several times. Maybe there is something she doesn't want them to know. They decide to go back to Jane's body and examine it further, hoping to find something that will help them. They start pulling Jane's body out of the lift and towards the autopsy room, but then Jane ignites a fire in the crematorium, and the smoke spreads throughout the basement. Tommy and Austin move forward through the smoke. Suddenly, the dead bodies attack Tommy and injure him badly, then disappear. Austin takes care of Tommy and takes him to the autopsy room, closing the door properly. Now, only Jane's brain was left to be examined. Austin directly cuts Jane's skull and looks at her brain. They find out that Jane's brain is completely intact, with no marks of injury on it either. When Austin cuts a piece of her brain and looks at it under a microscope, he discovers something shocking. Jane's brain cells are fully active, which means she is still alive and feeling all the pain inflicted on her. But how could Jane be alive even after all her body parts were taken out? This question bothers both of them. Tommy feels that some invisible energy is still keeping Jane alive. Meanwhile, Austin unknowingly folds the cloth found in Jane's vagina and sees it has Roman numbers written on it in red. When the words are put together, they form Leviticus 20 verse 27. Hearing this, Tommy quickly takes out his Bible and opens the chapter. The name of that chapter is Leviticus 7. Austin finds a year written on the cloth, 1693. Leviticus 20 verse 27 reads that any man or woman who tries to contact the devil should be killed, because they are a witch. Austin tells his father that 1693 was the time when many young women in England were accused of being witches and burnt alive in the market. This incident is known as the Salem witch trials. Connecting all these events, Tommy and Austin reach the shocking conclusion that Jane was one of the women murdered in 1693 and burnt alive in the market. Tommy believes that the women and girls killed during the Salem witch trials were not witches, but mentally ill people who fell prey to superstition. Although Tommy had been skeptical about ghostly incidents, he couldn't deny all the occurrences. He tells Austin that maybe Jane was never a witch, but was considered one due to superstition. The horrible and painful rituals might have backfired, involving an ordinary girl. Austin asks why Jane is after them only. Tommy says that whatever pain Jane has inflicted on them, she is trying to make them feel it too. Jane wants them to experience the pain she went through, and that's why she has kept them alive. Tommy shows Austin the marks on his body, similar to those on Jane's body. Suddenly, the dead men standing at their door try to break in. Austin runs towards the door to stop them, but Tommy is sure that Jane cannot be stopped. He makes a deal with Jane, saying she can take him but should spare his son. Everything calms down for a moment. Then Jane starts giving Tommy the same pain she felt. Tommy's bones start breaking, his eyes turn white, and his body is in great pain. Austin can't stand seeing his father's agony and kills him with a knife to relieve him of the pain. Jane is unable to recover completely due to Tommy's death, but everything returns to normal, and all the dead bodies return to their original state. Austin hears Sheriff's voice and goes towards the door, but the door is still closed. He asks Sheriff for help, but instead of helping, Sheriff starts singing, "Open up your heart and let the sunshine in." Austin realizes there is no real sheriff outside, but an illusion created by Jane. Austin hits Tommy's body, unknowingly causing Jane's body to recover. This enrages Jane further, causing Austin to hear the sound of bells tied to the dead men's feet again. Suddenly, a dead Tommy appears in front of him, causing Austin to fall from the lift and hit his head, resulting in his death. The next morning, Sheriff goes to the morgue with the police, where they find the bodies of Tommy, Austin, and Emma. Like the previous deaths, these deaths also remain a mystery for Sheriff. He suspects there is something wrong with Jane's dead body and orders it to be sent to the Virginia Police Department for further investigation. At the end, we see a policeman taking Jane's dead body to Virginia. The song, "Open Up Your Heart and Let the Sunshine In," starts playing automatically on the radio. At this moment, there is some movement in Jane's thumb, and the film ends here. Friends, if you liked this video and enjoyed watching it, please subscribe to support us so that we can bring more videos like this for you. Thank you.